Welcome to the Mike on Much podcast. I'm your host, Mike Veerman, and I'm here with my friend and trusty producer, Max Kerman. Max, what's up?
Yo, yo.
And I'm also here with the pop culture aficionado and soon-to-be dad, Shane Cunningham.
Is that how we're always going to introduce him?
Papa culture. Yeah. It's like winning an Oscar. You're always introduced a different way.
Or like a former president.
Yeah.
Okay, so lots going on, guys, in Pod World. Today on the show, we have Mike Birbiglia, who we interviewed in Montreal at Just for Laughs. And
he's a bit of a godfather, I think, of podcasts in a way, because he's been very much a part of This American Life. And so, like, I think people in the pod world would know his name pretty quickly.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll get to him in a bit. You know, I'm a huge fan of his movie, Don't Think Twice, and it was a thrill to talk to him. And he actually has a show here in Toronto at the Toronto Just for Laughs, 7 p.m. Friday night, September 29th, the Sony Center for Performing Arts. So I think it's sold out. There might still be tickets online.
You're going.
I'm going. Yeah. So I'm going this Friday because I'm really excited to see his show. You know, Sarah McLaren, who's a huge advocate of this pod and a major friend of the pod, she saw his show in Montreal and she said she like laughed and cried and it was really moving. So I'm excited to see what Mr. Birbiglia has in store on Friday night at the Sony Center. So we'll get to him in a bit. A couple other things that are going on, guys. I guess I'm like this dude that kind of like hosts panels now.
It's cool. It's a cool gig, man.
Do you like that?
I mean, yeah, I enjoyed doing the panel at Just for Laughs in Montreal with a bunch of the Much Digital Studios creators. And this week on Thursday, I'm doing a JFL Presents In Conversation with Guys We F***ed. You'll have just heard us bleep that, but that's an extremely popular podcast and I'm hosting. So that's at 4:45 at Second City here in Toronto. I'm going to be talking to those ladies. It's 60 minutes. So that's 45-minute conversation with me and the ladies and then 15-minute Q&A with fans.
You'll be great at it though, Mike. Like I when we got the offer for you to host it, I was like, Mike will be just fine. And then they said, should Shane do it with you? I said, no.
Well, it's interesting because...
Did they actually?
No, I'm just making that up. But in my mind, I played that out.
I wasn't on that email.
That was a good
great.
dig, yeah. but they do a kind of like it's all one big dessert from the one I listened to about their lives and stuff. So it'd be interesting if you ask them about, like, you know, how we deal with legal issues, stuff like that, clearance.
Shane, I'm not even kidding. So I've reached out to some people that are maybe familiar. Friend of the pod, Matt Unsworth, who lives down in LA. I mentioned the pod. I'm like, I'm taking like any suggestions of things we can talk about. It's a 45-minute conversation. We always sort of crowdsource from our friends whenever we're doing something like this. That's the first thing Unzi said was he was like, you guys know how in those first few episodes, Shane told some stories that never got to go to air because people threatened to sue you? And I was like, yeah, he's like, ask the girls if they have any issues with that because they're obviously talking about these encounters they've had with guys they've met. Yeah. And I thought that was an interesting angle. Like, do you ever worry about the legalities?
Like all the problems that we have with the desserts, I think would apply to them and ask how they kind of navigate their way through.
Yeah. And it's a good way for me to sort of shoehorn in some Shane stories that...
promote the pod, man. Yeah. That's what it's about at the end of the day.
And then also, lastly, I'm moderating, hosting this Letterkenny table read Friday, September 29th at the Bell Lightbox. That's going to be awesome because we love those guys.
And there's going to be a lot of diehards there, so Letterkenny fans, buy tickets now.
Buy tickets now because it's gonna fill up real
they're
quick.
like Canadian gods.
People love them, man.
They really
I
are.
love them.
And you know, Ash, I know Jared a little bit, and Ash is really good friends with Jared. And apparently he really runs the show. Like everything from like the promos that you guys have to cut to like the press he's willing to do. It's like he does things exactly on his own terms, which is cool because it's like on one hand, it's a kind of you could say it's a campy comedy Canadian show. But on the other hand, it's like, no, that dude is the real deal. He's in 19-2.
Yeah, which is a drama.
Yeah, which is a drama. And the way he's sort of navigated running his own show and making it what it is today is like really impressive to me.
And like for a guy that has so much going on, like he couldn't be nicer, genuinely nice.
It's weird. Like when we went to his house to party that one night, he acted like he knew who I was. And he's like, oh, from the podcast. And then he acted like he remembered me from a shoot we had like 9 months earlier.
Did you do a shoot with him 9 months earlier?
Yeah, but it was almost like an assistant like fed him something. He read it real quick and then like, I don't know.
He might remember you though. I wouldn't be surprised.
He's got but he knew everybody. Like he's very...
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So even though, you know, with most people that are sort of, you know, recognizable or successful or celebrity, you think they do need reminders. I think with him, he really just...
Yeah, I don't think he actually had an assistant. I was just saying it was almost like that.
It's
like,
that good,
yeah.
but he's genuine, like honestly. And, you know, he makes you feel really at ease.
He has a fridge full of beer. I'm also in his, he invited me to a bachelor pool. So I was in a bachelor pool with him this past season.
The show The Bachelor.
Yeah, Shane was very jealous.
Yeah, of course.
So anyway, shouts to.
So you're the best friend to him out of the three of us, I guess.
I guess so. I'd be number one, but you know, things can change.
Wait till this table read. Maybe I'll sneak
That's
in
right,
there, fellas.
maybe Mike will be number one.
But yeah, so all those are going on. So if you're in the Toronto area, come check it out. Say hi to me. You know, come for the ladies from Guys We F***ed. Come for the cast of Letterkenny, and maybe say hi to me if you're around.
Do it.
Fellas, a lot going on. TIFF just concluded here in Toronto.
TIFF's pretty cool, I gotta say.
Toronto International Film Festival. Now, this isn't like, you know, sometimes if you have something happening locally, you pump it up, you're like, oh, it's a big deal. This is legitimately, internationally, a big deal. I think it might be considered the biggest film festival in the world.
Yeah, I always get a lot of pride, like if I'm listening to like a movie podcast. Anne Hornaday, who's like my favorite movie critic for the Washington Post, she's like, I'm going up to Toronto to do stuff at TIFF. It's like on the circuit with Cannes and what's the other one in Utah or whatever?
Sundance?
That one, yeah.
The Venice.
Venice.
There's a lot of great festivals, but I mean, do you guys think Toronto is the biggest?
Well, Toronto, it's always one or two. Like, I don't know who rates these or how they're rated, but they always say it's number one or number two. I haven't been to the others, to be honest. But
did I tell you that my dad, not in the last like few years, but for probably a good like 20-year run or however long TIFF's been around for, would go to see like 2 to 3 movies every day during TIFF.
I love that.
He just like took time off work. He and his friend Simon would buy like a boatload of tickets. And my dad's thing is he doesn't want to know anything about any movie ever going into it. He
like
doesn't
premise, stars.
Doesn't read a single review. So get this. I don't know if I've told you this story. And a little backstory. The way he came to this method of watching movies is that when he was a young person, he saw Rosemary's Baby. He was in university in Detroit, went back home to New York. So he comes home. He's like, I gotta go see a movie this afternoon. He goes, see, Rosemary's Baby, cool. Doesn't know anything about it. And he just remembers the feeling that it came over his body when he finds out that Rosemary had been taken over by
I've never seen that movie, man.
You've never seen it?
No.
Have you really?
No.
Oh my goodness. It's like a classic.
I know.
Essentially, Rosemary, they move into this building in New York City. I won't give away do you know the twist? A lot of people know the twist, except for Max.
Ruins the story that you don't.
She's a man, right, or something?
No, that's the crying
Ace
game.
Ventura. Yeah.
Anyway, okay. Are
you gonna tell the plot?
Twist, but I'll just say,
are we gonna do a 30-year-old spoiler alert? It's
Just
fine.
do it. Tell me.
Basically, she moves into this apartment, and her husband and everybody in the apartment seems very weird, and they're kind of obsessed with her. It's kind of like she's like, is this a cult? What is going on? They make love. She kind of doesn't remember it. She gives birth to the baby. Everyone's obsessed with Rosemary's Baby, and it is because of the spawn of Satan.
Satan.
So, but my dad, when you realize that she's been taken over by Satan, basically, he just remembers this like crazy feeling coming over his body, and he just knows that if he had read like one review of it, he'd be like, the movie where something like happens.
You boil it down to its most basic, but he don't get that shock value.
And he loved the shock value. So then he's another story like this going to the Toronto Film Festival. He goes to see this movie. Yeah, cool. Okay, it's a Western. Cool. I like Westerns, whatever. You know, a couple guys hanging out in the mountains.
I could guess where this is going.
It's Brokeback Mountain. Yes. He had no idea that it was a movie.
Wow, those guys are really close.
Yeah. But isn't that a cool way to witness? Because everyone who goes to see Brokeback Mountain knows it's about two
Did your
gay
dad
couples.
walk out of that film?
No, he did not walk out. He's like, what? Yeah. No, actually, he did walk out of Captain Phillips, though.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Not enough gay sex now? He gets a taste for it?
He gets a taste for it. Every movie's the search for the next Brokeback. He's trying to guess by titles.
This Western sucks now.
Yeah, he thought The Magnificent Seven might be an awesome orgy.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Oh man. Yeah, but anyway, so so actually I've sort of prescribed to that model. I don't like to know much about when I when I go into a movie.
I refuse to read a review.
Well,
I'll watch a trailer, I know a premise, but I won't read a review because it influences your thinking.
Well, it's very obsessive though, and it drives my mom crazy because they'll be at like a dinner party, just like, and then like a movie will come up, and then my dad will, and he'll like stop it, and he'll cover his ears, and they'll walk out of the room and just totally embarrass my mom. Also, if you go to movies with my dad, when the previews start, he puts on his big ass headphones and closes his eyes, and he starts, but you can hear the music that's playing, like Jackson Brown or something like that, while the previews are playing.
Because he's cranking it.
Because he's cranking, doesn't want to know anything.
That's crazy. Wow.
But this year's TIFF was extra special because we had a friend who directed maybe the biggest movie of TIFF. I don't know if it was actually, but
it probably had some of the biggest buzz.
Yeah.
Well, for a guy like Mike, especially, it was the Vince Carter doc, the Carter
talk
Effect.
about it.
Yeah, so really good friend of the pod, Sean Menard, who's going to come on.
We went to high school with this guy.
Literally, Sean Menard and my brother have been best friends since they were like 8 or 9 years old. Sean Menard was like running around my townhouse when he was like 9 with my brother, you know, being funny like little kids.
And Greg, who's also Mike's brother, my roommate, has worked with Menard on and off for the last 3-4 years, working on many different sports documentaries and
absolutely
grand projects. And you and Menard are kind of like nemesis, right? Basically,
you know, when
arch
you're
rivals, maybe.
Yes, no. You know, when you're so like close to someone, you get a little bit competitive with them. So Menard was a grade below me. But I like, you know, I fail so many grades. I eventually get to meet everyone in every grade. So when I got to his grade, like a year below me, we became very, very good friends. It was kind of like me, Mike's brother, and Sean. We did everything together. We started like a production company called Snatch TV Productions, and Sean was like kind of like my right-hand man, helping me out with everything, assistant directing. When we got basically our first job, we worked at the movie theater together, and we would do announcements together. We literally did everything together. If there was an athletic banquet, we would both host it. Shane and Sean were synonymous with each other. So it was always like a competition, like who's better.
You drove each other in a way because you both wanted to be the funnier, more attention-seeking guy.
And then Silver City, where we worked, the movie theater, had an award ceremony. And this was kind of going to prove who's the better guy. And it was who does the best announcements and who's the funniest. And that's my dream, to have a competition to see who the funniest guy is. Because, you know, sometimes you have a view of yourself and then the public actually is like, oh, actually, you're not what you think you are. Turns out I got voted the funniest player. Yeah. But Sean had a theory that if I got voted the funniest player, I wouldn't get voted for best announcements. But he was wrong.
You got best announcements?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah. And then he ended up doing this great doc that got into TIFF.
He was laughing, yeah.
Would you say that moment is what led to this moment of him being on stage with LeBron
like
James?
Probably, moment,
yeah.
Like at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, led him to be the president?
Well, it definitely, you know, it did drive him a little bit. So maybe in some way it did. I don't know. But.
Well, for listeners, what's so special is, so this guy we're talking about, Sean Menard, who, like Max said, he's worked super hard. My brother's worked with him a bunch on Connor McDavid doc, who's #1 pick in the NHL.
He came to your bachelor party?
He was at my bachelor, he was at my wedding.
The only reason why he's not a champagne boy is because he doesn't booze like everybody else in the group. That's basically it. If he came out more, he'd be in.
Yeah.
But he's a little more focused than everybody.
That's the way in, to come out.
We talk about him actually in the very first episode of this pod.
That's true if you want to go back and listen. But what's so amazing is that Sean directed this film called The Carter Effect. It's about Vince Carter and his influence on the city of Toronto in the early 2000s when he came here and sort of was the first superstar that we'd ever seen in the NBA. We were a pretty young franchise. And what's so special is that LeBron James's production company, Uninterrupted, produced this. They ended up meeting up with Sean, and there's a whole story that we're going to get into when Sean's on the thing. But what this led to was Sean Menard being on stage at a massive theater in Toronto during TIFF with Drake and LeBron James. It was surreal to see. Shane, you were in the building for this.
What was it like?
Well, it was extra weird too, because my seat, I was sitting directly behind Masai, who's the Toronto Raptors general manager, and to the right was Dwayne Casey, the coach of the Raptors. So that was tripping me out because the entire time watching the film, I had already seen a rough cut. So I'm watching it through their eyes. I'm seeing what makes them laugh, what jokes are hitting, and just how they're enjoying it. And then at the very end, Masai runs out of his seat. I'm like, I kind of wanted a picture with Masai. But then he runs on the stage, and then LeBron James comes out, and then Drake comes out, and and Sean comes out. Like, it's pretty surreal to see like this guy you went to high school with all of a sudden on a stage with two of the biggest superstars in the world. Two
of the 10 most famous people in the world.
And probably, he's the best GM in the NBA, maybe?
Masai Ujiri.
Yeah.
He's definitely top 5. Considered that.
So that was very crazy. And then they do a Q&A, and Sean is on the same level, if not higher than these people in terms of like the person answering the question. And at one point he puts his arm around LeBron James and makes a joke. And I'm just cringing because I'm like, if this doesn't go well, it's going to be so fucking awkward. But then there's a beat where no one laughs, and then the crowd just erupts, and then LeBron's loving it. And then, like, you know how you got that fist bump with Wayne Gretzky? He gets the fist bump with LeBron James.
Yeah,
so he won up to you.
A topic of the conversation in the Champagne Boys group is that my fist bump with Gretzky is really nothing compared to what Sean just had that weekend.
You should have brought your funniest and best announcement awards and just conceded them to Sean after that.
Well, I was heckling throughout the entire movie.
Oh, man. But
so, yeah, memorable TIFF, magical stuff. And there's so many, I think, stories and things. And, you know, Sean's riding a wave right now. I mean, for a long time, he's wanted to be on the pod.
Well, it was funny.
We said, yeah, do something worthy of being on our pod, and maybe we'll invite you.
Well, what was impressive is when he said, I want to be on the pod, Max, you said, if you ever end up on a stage with LeBron and Drake, then you can be on the pod.
It was oddly specific.
It was. It's kind of like the When Pigs Fly, and the man did it.
He delivered. What's the best? You know what? We'll save the Sean stuff for when he's actually on the pod.
Should we? So listeners, Sean will be on. He will give us all of the inside details on how he managed to do a documentary produced by LeBron James and his company, Uninterrupted, how his affiliation with Drake, how that all came about, because it's all very fascinating stuff. And we've all heard sort of like half versions of things because we are very strict. We're like, nope, save it for the pod. That is our mantra. And Sean has, so we're going to get the exclusive from him and his journey when he's on the pod in a few weeks.
Yeah, I'm so happy for him.
You know, that goes without saying. And
I don't know where you guys, only maybe because my relationship's a little different. I only came to know him in the last six years, say. But it's nice to just be purely, genuinely happy for somebody and not be even a little bit jealous.
Yeah.
Because, you know, you see your friends do stuff and sometimes, and you're mostly happy for them. And then sometimes you're like, oh shit, man, I could have had that or something. But with just me, I was away. I think we were in Edmonton that day. And I was just like seeing the pictures and stuff like that. Just like so thrilled for Sean. So it's very cool.
Yeah. Shane, how do you feel about Sean?
Same as Max.
So actually, you know, Max, what you're speaking to, which is kind of like the idea of like not being jealous and just being genuinely happy for somebody, kind of leads perfectly into our featured guest today, and that's Mike Birbiglia. And that's only because he wrote and directed a movie called Don't Think Twice that I really loved and I recommended to a bunch of people. I saw this like a year ago, so I was excited to talk to him. But that movie is essentially about like a comedy troupe that's kind of, you know, doing their New York City thing. And SNL, or a version of it in the movie, they'll scout this like comedy troupe. And the thing is, like, they're like 7 people or 6, I can't remember. They work together. You know, they're all funny. They all play a part. They're all creatives. But, you know, when SNL comes and has a scout in the audience, they all want to get on the big show. So it's like they're working together in essence, but they're also trying to achieve their individual goals. And the movie really sort of, I think, focuses interestingly on what you're talking about. Like the idea of like being happy for a friend, but then, you know, maybe professionally being a little bit envious.
Yeah.
It's hard and creative, right? Because you're all trying to work together. I think that's one thing that's worked really well, I think, with our group, or like, you know, the idea of everybody supporting one another as opposed to sort of
really
taking them
stepping on each other's toes much. It's actually kind of unique, I feel like, for a group our size, when I say the Champagne Boys, that everybody's sort of has their own lane and has generally been like helpful or like found ways to naturally collaborate with each other.
Yeah, and if none of the listeners have seen that film, Don't Think Twice, I really liked it. And Mike Birbiglia is like, you know, he's a celebrated stand-up. He's been in a lot of movies. He's written and directed his own. And this interview specifically took place in Montreal at Just for Laughs a few weeks ago. And it's notable for a couple of reasons. The night before we do this interview, I'd run into Mike Birbiglia at the elevator and we sort of had this interaction. This was right after he'd come off stage and won his award for like best stand-up or stand-up of the year, something like that. And we talked a bit about this on our Just for Laughs episode. So almost right off the top, we kind of get into that award show, which, just to put you in the right frame of mind, had Judd Apatow there, Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey's sort of at the start of, and he's been in the news lately, obviously, because of Fashion Week and him going on about his existential sort of journey. Mike Birbiglia, sort of interestingly, we go right into that. We talk about Jim at that awards show. Mike talks about his headspace in winning that award, and then his journey sort of from starting out like and just kind of wanting to be funny and do stand-up all the way to making the films in his one-man show.
Do you remember who was watching us during that interview?
I don't.
There was a Eddie Delasepe through the window glaring at me the entire time.
Are you serious?
Because I had almost, if you haven't listened, I almost attacked him that night.
Go back and listen to the JFL episode if you want to hear about Eddie Delasepe.
So he really didn't know who I was or anything. But then the next day I walk by him and he sees that I'm sitting down. I just walk right and sit down on the deck with Mike Birbiglia on the patio.
Yeah.
So he's like, holy shit, this is actually somebody. Directly after that interview, he messaged me on Instagram.
Seriously?
Yeah. I guess I gained some credibility, or like I must be somebody.
Little tidbit. So this is Shane and I sitting on the back patio of the Hyatt Hotel, talking with Mike Birbiglia about his career and many other things. Him interning at Conan O'Brien.
Yeah.
Lots of great
when
stuff.
You're listening to it, you should only think about Eddie Dillasippy also watching you guys. That'd be my recommendation for the listeners on this one.
Want to get to it?
Let's do it.
Have you been? I actually ran into you at the elevator last night.
I remember, yeah, we were both lost. We were both lost walking away from the awards show, which is fitting because they were so disorienting.
Yes.
The awards. Because it was a very surreal thing to see Jim Carrey and Trevor Noah and Judd Apatow and Ali Wong and all these people, Kenya and Craig Ferguson, all these people in the same room together, all sort of giving some semblance of humorous and heartfelt speech.
Yeah.
And Jim Carrey just sort of blown the doors off the place.
Yeah.
And mesmerizing the audience.
Well, I mean, he was fascinating. It was like his speech was sort of a mix of his manic sort of Jim Carrey improv and then also really sort of insightful, introspective.
It's sort of an existential exploration, I felt like.
Totally. And the balance was completely compelling. You know, you never...
It was wonderful. God, you want to see an hour of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, actually, to see more.
That's kind of where I was going to start was the award that you won last night, which was for Stand-Up Comedian of the Year.
Yeah.
So congrats.
Thank you.
What was going through your head at the award show, I guess, in general? You give us a bit of that.
I was very mellow until I got in the room, and then I was entirely stressed out.
Why?
I mean, you just look around and you feel like you're in some kind of weird dream with all those people. I didn't think when I was growing up that watching Pet Detective that I'd meet the guy who's in the movie. Like, I grew up in Massachusetts in a suburb. Nobody went into show business. I mean, like, it's this outrageous turn in my life, which is you can't account for, and it kind of never gets old.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that to speak to what Craig Ferguson said at the event, he goes to the young comics, he goes, just so you know, the hole that you're trying to fill inside you by doing comedy, it doesn't go away. I've been doing this 30 years, it doesn't go away. That is true. But then sort of that still exists. And then combined with that, if you're lucky, you end up in a room like that where there's all these mega stars who are the top of their field. Yeah. And you just go, well, geez, I didn't see this coming.
When you set out to perform, you mentioned coming up in Massachusetts, had you always wanted to be a performer? Or did you lean more toward writing?
Yeah, I wanted to be... well, my brother Joe, who's here with me and works with me full-time, collaborates with me, produces my specials, he introduced me to comedy when I was in like sort of 8th grade, which is the luckiest thing that could have ever happened to me. He was a senior in high school. He was writing satire issues of the school newspaper. And I was sort of, standing over his shoulder at the computer going like, oh, that's funny. And maybe like I'd kick a line or two here and there, or really being the audience for it, the process. And that got me into doing that. So in high school, I was writing satirical issues of my school newspaper. I loved that. And I started performing sketch comedy in high school, and then I did plays. And so there's this whole sort of moment of like, oh, I'd really like to do something in this realm. And that's when Conan was really in its sweet spot.
Yeah.
Like Conan in the 90s just had like on staff, it had Smigel and Louis C.K. and all these really innovative comedy minds were contributing to really sort of a legendary comedy talk show.
Yeah, it was absurd with the masturbating bear.
Yeah.
And the guy that would yell pubes. And it's just like, it was really funny stuff that I know Letterman had done it before, but
there was a new energy. Yeah. No, absolutely. And so then I just want to be a writer for Conan. That was the goal. I think everybody did. Like everybody in my generation, Mindy Kaling and I remember there's a bunch of people who ended up being interns, John Krasinski, there's a ton of us like who wanted to be writers in Conan. That's all we wanted. I was an intern on Conan when I was a freshman in college.
Oh, okay, so that's interesting. So first of all, did these goals always seem attainable to you? Because some people were like, hey, I didn't think I'd ever make it. I was just kind of trying to do good things. And then secondly, how do you land that internship?
I thought if I was lucky, I mean, I've always been a bit delusional. I think I say this in my book, Sleepwalk with Me. I think that to be a comedian, you have to be a little bit delusional. You have to tell yourself it's going well when it's not going well. Because otherwise you wouldn't get on stage the next night. You'd just be like, I guess human beings don't like me, you know? And that's how I really was that way in high school. I thought like, oh, maybe someday I could be a writer on Conan. That seemed not likely, but like possible. And so then I was an intern. I asked all the writers, Mike Sweeney and Brian McCann, Brian Stack, how do you become a writer on Conan? It's like the quintessential thing. It's like the wrong question to ask. It's like, how do I become you?
How do I get your job?
How do I take you out?
Yeah, here's the roadmap. But how do you get the internship? Because that in and of itself is like winning a lottery.
Very hard to get. My sister Gina was working at Lifetime Television in New York City, which is a network.
Yeah.
And a friend of hers was a producer, who she had worked with at Lifetime, was a producer at Conan. He got me the interview. The interview went well. And then I think I really just kept bugging them to the point where they were like, you can show up next week. You know, it's sort of that kind of thing. They didn't take me right away, but they sort of like, I wore them down, I think. And so I asked Brian McCann, like, you know, Brian Stack, all these guys, how do you do this? Some of them would say, like Mike Sweeney, I was a stand-up. Some of them, Brian McCann, Stack, I was an improviser in Chicago. I went back to college at Georgetown sophomore year, and I doubled down on being a stand-up and doing improv. Like, I'm gonna do all this. I'm gonna do whatever these people did all the time and basically skip school.
Yeah.
I mean, I barely went to college when I went to college.
Well, you got like an alternative education.
An alternative education.
Sure.
I make my own curriculum. I won the funniest person on campus contest, Georgetown. And then one of the judges was the owner or the manager and booker of the Washington, DC Improv Comedy Club, a stand-up comedy club. So I won a chance to perform there, and I won a $200 check. I should point out, it was a large check, you know, a human body sized check. That really the printing of it probably cost about $200. I really wish they could have just. I wish they could have thrown me maybe $350 or $400 and just not done the big check.
Yeah.
So
you still have the check?
No, God, no.
Right.
I mean, yeah. So then I performed at the DC Improv. I opened for Dave Chappelle long before Chappelle became what the megastar he became. And it was right before Half Baked was about to come out.
Okay.
And he goes, and then I asked to do some more stand up there, and they said, well, we don't need you to do stand up. We have enough of that, but you can work the door, take tickets, bring nachos to tables. And that's what I did. I did that for like almost 4 years.
Wow.
And then I sort of would get on stage and ask advice. You know, I opened for George Lopez, and Margaret Cho, and Kathleen Madigan, and Mitch Hedberg, David Tell.
Successful comedians are coming through your opening.
Yeah, I'm Brian Regan, all these guys, Jake Johansson, just asking them tons of questions. I suppose the way I ended up here is just by asking way too many questions and being really annoying.
Are you able
and now I'm annoying your listeners.
When you, like when we were at the award show, someone was saying when they saw, I think it was Judd Apatow, he was saying when he saw Jim Carrey, you just knew he was going to be a star. Is it like that when you see someone like Dave Chappelle? Or
by the way, can we speak to what Judd said when he goes, every comic in this room knows that they're not, that Jim Carrey is better than them, except maybe Mike Birbiglia. It's like, what do you get? What are you talking about? What are you talking about? What are you getting at? I mean, Judd and I are good friends. Like, what does that even mean?
Maybe speaking to your self-confidence.
I don't know. I certainly don't feel that way. It was like a slight burn. He burned me and kept moving.
Yeah, and it didn't seem like you're that type of guy. So I was
no,
like,
I know.
what's the backstory here?
There was no backstory. I had a dinner with 2 of them the night before. It was very nice.
That's hilarious.
Maybe he was getting that vibe off me.
Maybe the joke is that's the antithesis to who you are.
Maybe it is.
Yeah.
Maybe it is. Maybe like Jimmy Carr's thing. Jimmy Carr's thing was amazing.
Right.
His intro of
he
me was ridiculous.
He was great, and he's a buddy of yours.
Yeah, he's very generous. One of the funniest comics in the world. If people don't know his work, one of the world's great comedians, and always I said in my speech, I go, always looks like he's about to give an award.
Yeah,
that was great.
It's totally true.
That was a great
And then
joke.
he introduced me by saying his movie's been compared to early Woody Allen. His stand-up's been compared to early Bill Cosby. So he's clearly a sexual predator of some kind.
Hiding in plain sight.
Yeah, hiding in plain sight. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Jimmy is brilliant, but I'm sorry, I interrupted your question.
Yeah, it was just, do you have the, do you see someone like Dave Chappelle and like, that's going to be a star, this guy's going to blow up? Or is it just...
To me, he already was.
Oh, okay.
So that was like post HBO special, maybe like an HBO half hour, I think he had.
Yeah, okay.
Or right around that time. Like I had seen him on like comics, Comic Relief. I'd seen him on talk show. He was like 24, 25. And
But he'd been
to
on TV.
me, he
He
was
had
a big
spots. Yeah.
star. I mean, for comedy nerds like us, like people are stars before the stars. Like I was a fan of Mitch Hedberg when he had a Comedy Central half hour, and not when he had 3 specials and 4 albums or whatever.
Well, you mentioned, grinding, working, doing improv sort of while you were going to school. I mentioned this when I saw you at the elevator, that I'm a big fan of Don't Think Twice.
Oh, thanks.
So when you write...
Which, by the way, I should ask you, in Canada, is it on Netflix? Is it on iTunes? I don't even know where it's available.
So here's the truth. I actually rented it. It was on demand, but it is now available like on the movie network and all that.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Oh, and it's on Netflix
I think
now,
that's
too.
how I saw it.
It just came on Netflix.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
It's available everywhere now.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
It's great to hear.
But I paid the money for it early.
I really need that. And if you could just throw me a few bucks at the end of this interview, I'd really appreciate it.
I'll give you a $200 check.
Because it's just that the money doesn't come through direct channels. So if you could just float me the money in the short term, as soon as I get it, I'll send it back here, Western Union.
I like it. I'll e-transfer you the money. So I mean, obviously the character you play,
Miles, despicable.
Well, I mean, there's
Cad.
something, you really capture the sort of essence of trying to be successful in creative, because it's
thanks.
there's envy, but you're happy for your friends.
Sure.
All of that
all
stuff.
of it, yeah.
But you still seem likable, even though you were maybe
thanks.
doing dubious things.
Well, if people don't know the film, it's like my character. It's about this group of best friends in an improv group, or one of them gets cast on a Saturday Night Live type of show,
Yes.
and the rest of them don't. And it's about what happens with friendships when people realize that not everyone's going to get the same thing in life.
Well, the
That's
question
really the essence of it.
is, how personal is that character? Because you must have seen peers go on, and now you're very successful. So
I feel like there's pieces of me in 3 of the characters.
That's what I'm getting at,
Yeah,
Kevin.
I would say Miles, I have a little bit of his bitterness, my character. Keegan's character, Jack, I have a little bit of like the aspirational, ambitious side. And then Gillian's character, Samantha, is really who I want to be. So I wish I was that person who's optimistic and hopeful that the art can conquer commerce. You know what I mean? That art is greater than commerce.
Yeah.
And I'd like, honestly, I'd like to think that that's what I've been able to do or try to do in my career, which is make things that are small, that have artistic integrity, as opposed to making things big where, Fox or Universal or Paramount will say like, no, that doesn't appeal to enough people. We need to make our $30 million back. I feel like I work in small budgets so that I don't need to make big grosses.
Well, that's speaking to sort of the workflow or the minutia of the business. Do you write, then send to your friends, like you have specific casting?
So much.
And then do you have a hand on like raising the money? Do you fund your own films? How do you make one of your films? All of it.
That's all correct.
Right.
That's next question. No, it's
Sure.
no, it really is a soup to nuts thing. I mean, we're living in an era where we're when I was in college, it's a totally different era than when I was in college. I made a short film and it cost me $4,000 to make like a 10-minute short that was so bad that the editor stole the footage and never returned it to us. That's how bad it was. It was uneditable. And it was $4,000. And the quality of that footage could be shot today on my iPhone that I'm holding for free.
That's it.
I mean, for whatever whatever an iPhone costs, $700, $600.
We're getting the wrap-up sign here, man.
Could I just ask one more question,
Please.
So Mike and I were kind of having a debate about this.
By the way, there's a lot of pressure on this question. It's really
This is the hammer.
This is gonna encapsulate it all. And also, by the way, plugging my show in Toronto in September.
This is what I was going to get to, but we
Please.
end up going the long way around. I want to talk about the show you premiered here in Montreal.
Yeah.
But,
Is that what your question was?
No, but
No.
if this is the preferred thing, the plug is why you're here.
well, his show's coming to Toronto in
September.
September. This
Just
will
for laughs
absolutely be out before
at
that.
the Sony Center.
One of our colleagues saw your show last night, which you premiered here in Montreal.
Yes.
She said she cried, tears of laughter, and then also emotionally moved.
I just heard that. That was so nice to hear. That's the goal.
Yeah.
That's the goal.
So that's a good plug. Now, Shane,
That's
with
really
your
nice.
your big question.
Well, I was
your
just going to
moment.
say, and Mike and I were debating this yesterday over dinner, that a lot of people say sometimes you have to be an asshole to make it in this industry. And I had a confrontation kind of yesterday with a comedian where he was like mildly rude to me, and he wasn't even like big or anything. I was like, oh, what? And Mike's kind of like, yeah, sometimes you got to be an asshole to make it. But you seem totally like you're not like that. You have like, I don't know, maybe it's just you have a kind face or something, but you truly seem like you are a nice person. Do you think there's one right way to go about it, or be yourself, or being an asshole does actually
I appreciate that. I aspire to be nice. I think being kind and being nice is it's important to be valued, because I think that even though we're entertainers and our jobs are very important to us, ultimately we're just these people. And then, in 50 years we'll be gone from the earth, and what will you have to say for yourself? Like, I made these movies. Yeah, who cares? Were you nice to people?
Right.
And it's important to me. I mean, it's hard at a festival like this because there's so many people who, young comics and people who want to talk or whatever it is, and you sort of try to give a few moments to everybody, but also, I'd like to think. I mean, if you'd have to ask people I've worked with, like people produce my specials, the ADs on my movies, and the various costume departments and makeup departments, but I try to. I try my best. I'm sure, as you guys do.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for your time, man. We really appreciate it.
Thanks.
And I would love to talk more about, we're from Toronto, so when you're in town, I'd love to talk more about your show.
That seems great.
Yeah, man.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Welcome to The Desserts. I'm here with, of course, Max, and our pop culture aficionado,
Papa
Shane.
culture?
Papa culture. Daddy boy.
Yeah.
Daddy boy? What's daddy boy?
I like Papa culture.
All
It
right,
just
we'll
makes
stick
more
with that.
sense.
Shane, this dessert, what do you got for us?
Well, since the latest news about me becoming Papa culture, I guess I'm going to actually review a lot more pop culture, because I made the decision not to drink for the entirety of the pregnancy. It's kind of
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah, it would cause so many problems in our relationship, and to be fair, she's not going to be drinking at all, so I'm not. I just think in solidarity, it's the better way to go.
Good move.
And I want to be healthy, and I want to have energy for the kid, because you don't want to be lethargic and bloated or whatever when the kid pops out.
So at our friend Matt McPeak's wedding in a couple days, you will not be consuming any alcohol.
Well, it's probably for the best, guys. Let's face it. There's going to be some people there that I could make a fool of myself in front of. If anyone has heard the Share Club episode, you know what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah.
But maybe we have to cut that part. But
I don't know. Let's carry on.
Producer keeping it moving.
All right. But so I've been trying to watch a lot of movies and TV shows. And Alex, my wife, has been very emotional and moody. We're thinking a lot, we have concerns if something goes wrong with the pregnancy, like that. Like, we've announced very early, so it's on our mind. So we're hyper aware of that. We're trying to be as healthy as possible. And I've never held a baby before, so I'm worried about when the kid does come out. I'm just worried about even holding the baby.
Keeping your streak going?
Oh, yeah. You hold it.
You've actually never held a baby in your life?
No, I never. I remember when I was 11, someone had a baby around, and they were like, "Here, hold it." And I was just terrified of holding this baby. So I've never held a baby. I'm I'm going to hold a baby when it's mine. So if I drop it, in my mind, the baby just dies when you drop it, right?
That's probably true.
So I'm scared. And the other day we were at a baseball thing after we won our championship, and a guy on the team was like, "Hey, hold my baby for practice," and I just got so terrified. And Alex, the other night, she just started bawling her eyes out, and I was like, "What's going on?" And she was like, "I've never paid a bill before." Really? So she's like, we're really like getting worried about the reality because I pay all of our bills, right? So worried about the realities of life a little bit. And the other day, I almost seriously injured your brother. So I'm almost like hurting live adult men.
You almost hurt my brother.
Yeah, like really bad, actually. This was actually horrible almost. So I'm walking, and I do this thing where I carry a medicine ball when I walk, because I like to add an extra 8 pounds to my weight. So if I'm walking, it's like, hey, I'm walking so when I go for a long walk, I carry a medicine ball with me.
Okay.
So it's like I'm heavier than I am. So I'm carrying extra weight without being that extra weight. And then you burn more calories.
Okay.
So I'm walking.
I thought it was to get ready for the newborn. 8 pounds.
I'm under my shirt.
You should just put in like a baby holster thing. Like,
No, it has nothing to do with baby. It's just for fitness. So I'm walking by the French the other day, and I see
restaurant.
Yeah, the French restaurant. I see the waitress, and she's like, "Hi, Shane. Hi, Alex." And then she's like, "Greg's here." And I was like, "Greg, Cara." And he's like, "Oh, playing basketball." And I go, "Oh, no, it's a medicine ball." And I just keep moving along. An hour later, when I'm coming back from my walk, he's coming towards me, and he's like, "Hey, pass me the ball." I'm like, "This will kind of be funny."
Oh,
Maybe
God.
he didn't hear me say it's a medicine ball. So I throw him the medicine ball, forgetting that he had just dislocated his shoulder.
Oh, yeah.
So he goes to catch it, but then it's like, it's a heavy fucking ball. And then it's like, and it like throws his arm back. But the second he feels weight, he just drops his arm, and the ball just kind of bounces at his feet and rolls onto the road. But he's like, "Oh man," like it was a very terrifying moment. Anyway, that extra freaked me out because I was like, I almost really hurt like a grown man. So anyway, I got into, I was trying to make Alex feel better. So we got into the show Ball in the Family with LeVar Ball.
Okay.
Like it's his new reality show.
It's on Facebook, right?
It's on, it's on the internet. It's like kind of like a Kardashian style show.
So you guys start watching this show.
Got super into it because he's like the best dad. Like he just.
Oh no!
Well,
Is this how you're getting parenting lessons from LeVar Ball?
Honestly, though, he's so good. Like he doesn't drink. All of his kids have like 4.0 GPAs. Like they're very smart. They're very disciplined, and they, I'd love to like raise a little NBA player. Like he has three. Like he has 3 boys, right?
Yeah.
They're all NBA prospects.
That's right. One's in the NBA.
Mm-hmm. And he has this like mantra type of thing where he's like, if you want it to happen, you just got to will it into existence. So, and that really made Alex feel better because he has his dream was for his son to play for the Lakers, to go number 2. And everyone was questioning whether that was a possibility. And then LeVar's like, "I know it's going to happen. It's going to happen because I'm willing it into existence." And the reporter's like, "What if it doesn't?" He's like, "It is." Anyway, long story short, his son, Lonzo Ball, got picked number 2 and he's playing for the Lakers.
That's right.
And now he's setting up his other sons to play in the NBA. So this is kind of like inspiring thing. It made Alex feel really good. Now she loves LeVar Ball, as do I, because his wife actually in the show had a stroke.
That's right.
And then he totally helps her, nurses her back to health. And you love LeVar. Like you would love LeVar after watching this. He's a totally different guy than kind of he's portrayed in the media. So that was a good show, kind of saved the day. Now, here's kind of like a thing that kind of went south because Alex and I wanted to have a movie night because that's going to be our new thing in our not drinking time. And we wanted to see the movie Mother.
The new Darren Aronofsky.
The new Darren Aronofsky film. And we love movies like psychological thrillers. Like
starring Jennifer Lawrence.
Yeah, starring Jennifer Lawrence. Darren Aronofsky is actually dating Jennifer Lawrence.
That's right. There's quite an age gap there, too.
In real life?
Yeah.
Cool.
And the movie kind of mirrors actually his real life because Javier Bardem stars in the movie also, and the age difference is, I believe, the exact same between Javier and Jennifer Lawrence. But anyway, it's a movie, if you've seen a movie like Exterminating Angel or The Invitation, or I guess Rosemary's Baby, it's kind of in that theme where weird shit starts to happen. And Aronofsky is one of my favorite directors, and I heard that this movie was kind of about Mother Nature. So I was like, okay, like it's called Mother. Originally, I thought Michelle Pfeiffer was going to just be like a psycho mom or whatever. I didn't know too much about it.
Right.
We go to the theater and the movie starts, and it's kind of like this very ominous, freaky vibe in the film. Javier Bardem, like, do you want to set the movie up a little bit?
Well, I was going to say that the big thing with this film is that it's like everyone says it's polarizing. It has like striking images. It's very weird. It's inaccessible. It's challenging, and it's kind of like an art house film, sort of masquerading as a mainstream thing because it's starring Jennifer Lawrence, who's a huge star, right?
And this is the guy who directed Requiem for a Dream
and Black Swan, which was a big Oscar darling. So anyway. But people knew this was going to be a challenging film. I saw the film as well. And so that's kind of the setup. And so like it starts with this couple in this house that's sort of like really secluded in the woods. It's Javier Bardem. He's an artist of some sort with writer block. Jennifer Lawrence is his young wife who's sort of renovating the house. And it's just the two of them. And then one day Ed Harris shows up at the door and then weird shit starts happening.
So all these people just start showing up and they just won't leave for whatever reason. Turns out Ed Harris is a big fan of Javier Bardem's work, whatever. Michelle Pfeiffer then shows up, and then she's acting very strange. And then it just keeps more and more people start showing up, and they won't leave, and the house is overrun, and Jennifer Lawrence gets very overwhelmed. Well, then you find out before long, after she sleeps with Javier Bardem once, and then she wakes up and she's pregnant. So it's very like similar thing that happened with Alex and I.
Alex f***ed Javier Bardem?
Yes. You know, our other kids, little Spanish kids. But I'm like, this could go bad and like kind of mess with our emotions a little bit. It's a very ominous, scary movie. But I'm like, okay, it's not going to go through the full pregnancy. What's going to happen? All of a sudden, she bends down and gets up, and she's got a full tummy. This movie's kind of like trippy. Like it's kind of like an acid trip, the entire film. So she has a full tummy. I'm like, oh shit, something really bad's going to happen to Jennifer Lawrence. It's going to ruin our night. So I'm just rooting for everything to go okay. All of a sudden, it's like a riot in the house. Like people are barging through into the house. Like it's like a riot. Like bombs are going off. Literally machine guns are...
Jeez.
So this might be a bit of a spoiler alert. If you're, no one's going to see this movie, though, trust me. Anyway, she locks herself into a room with Javier Bardem and just away from the chaos that's happening in the house. And like Kristen Wiig shows up and she starts shooting people in the head. Like the movie gets really f***ed up. She ends up having the baby. Baby comes out.
In this room with just Javier Bardem. They're locked into the room now and she gives birth to the baby.
Baby comes out and then Javier's like, let me hold it. And I'm like, don't hold that baby, Javier. Like something bad's going to happen. And I'm scared to hold babies too. And then she's like, no. And she won't let Javier hold the baby.
The big thing is that because all these people that keep coming that are obsessed with Javier Bardem, he keeps letting them in the house. And she's like, why are you letting these people into the house? So she's angry at him that he's allowing this all to happen.
Have you seen this movie?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But because they...
Is this a Stephen King novel or something?
No, it's original work by Darren Aronofsky.
Okay.
So Javier is pretty obsessed with fame, it turns out. So he just likes all the people around because they're just showing up to kind of worship him.
The adulation. And she's saying, what about us and the baby? And so she doesn't quite trust him. She doesn't want to give him the baby.
And then she falls asleep. I'm like, oh, shit. And by the way, when she does have the baby, it's one of the most painful looking pregnancies ever. Like,
why would you bring it?
She acted the hell out of it.
Max. I didn't know.
The movie's called Mother.
Yeah, it's directed by this guy who only makes weird shit.
I was told it was about Mother Nature.
Whatever.
And I thought Michelle Pfeiffer was the crazy mom. I didn't know this was going to happen. So anyway, the baby Javier grabs the baby. And all of a sudden, she's like, no, give it back. Javier gives it to the crowd. The baby starts pissing. The baby's being crowd served. Then it gets ripped apart and the crowd eats the baby. Then Jennifer Lawrence goes after to collect the baby parts. They kick her to the ground. They call her a They beat her to death. Then she goes then she goes to the basement and opens this weird vat and all this black shit comes out. And then she burns the house. The whole house goes up in flames. She engulfs herself, and then she's just this charred, nothingness. And then the movie kind of ends. There's a little bit more, but I don't want to ruin the film.
Was Alex very distraught leaving the theater? She must have been.
She was.
I'm distraught after just listening to the review.
It's the most disturbing film of all time. Yeah, anyone would be shaken up.
Did you like the movie though?
I thought it was awesome.
Me too.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. I thought it was challenging and it was weird, but I couldn't recommend it to a lot of people.
honestly, the only person I wouldn't recommend it to is pregnant mothers. Seriously.
That's it. That's all. That's our episode. Thank you so much. Check out my Birbiglia this Friday at the Sony Center for Performing Arts. If you haven't already have a ticket, I don't know if it's sold out. Go on StubHub. Find your shit.
Please get in touch with the pod. Leave a comment and rating at iTunes. Tweet at us. Message us. DM us on Instagram. Whatever you want to do. We'd love to hear from you. The artwork for the show is provided by Jenna Gregory. You can get more of her stuff at jennasdoodles.com. Big thanks to Tara Paquette for putting together the visuals for the show. Webmaster Dan, Justin Stockman, Greg Stewart,
Sarah McLaren,
the whole gang that helps this thing roll.
At Micah Much on Instagram and Twitter if you don't know already. See you next week if we don't die on the weekend.